Joining me to discuss today's stunning news, Jason Johnson, politics editor at The Root, Charlie Pierce, writer-at-large at Esquire, and conservative commentator, MSNBC contributor Charlie Sykes. Charlie, I want to start with you. So John McCain at a dinner to honor him just said that Trump scandals have reached a Watergate size and scale, which is a striking thing. And you've been writing about Charlie Sykes. You've been writing about the fact that there's a kind of hermetic seal around a lot of the news that a bunch of conservatives are consuming, such that what seems like a genuine legitimacy crisis, a constitutional crisis in the making, brewing, to a lot of people just isn't, because they're getting a story the media is essentially hysterical.
Yeah, do not underestimate the ability of the alternative reality media on the right to defend, to deflect, and to rationalize what's going on. I mean, we really do have these different echo chambers. And right now, you know, they live in a completely different world. This is about nothing. It is about fake news. Okay, maybe it's about fake news, but the real story is about the leak. Okay, he did nothing wrong. He was appropriate. Plus, whatever Hillary did was a lot worse than all of that. So, you know, ultimately, this will be up to Republicans to decide the fate of the Trump presidency. But the number to keep in mind, to look at, is what is the Trump base? The Republican base is still solidly behind Donald Trump because they get this drumbeat from the anti-Trump media. And I don't think that that's changing. Now, the question is, at some point, will they develop a sense of shame? Will they get tired of eating the crap sandwiches the White House is serving them? But I'm not sure that we're quite there yet.
Well, I heard, Jason, tonight, I kept hearing, you know, members of Congress, Joaquin Castro, Dick Durbin, others saying they're getting there sort of off the record. But it seems to me that anyone putting their hopes in that is misplaced.
Right. It would take a lot of change in the House, like 2018 level change, for Trump to get in any sort of trouble. But it doesn't take impeachment for this presidency to basically be hobbled. Look at Montana. Look at Georgia. If either of those two races go wrong for the Republican Party, you're going to see people scared, and they're going to start asking more questions.
Well, and Charlie Pierce, this is a great point. I saw Eric Erickson just tweeting about, you know, hearing from Republican politicos that the polling has moved against Republicans in those two races. There's Georgia 6, the at-large of Montana. I mean, the calculation here is a calculation of pure politics, and those are fundamentally, it seems to me, the incentives that are going to matter. Do you think that's the case?
I have been floored by how supine the Republican congressional majorities have been through all of this. Okay, I understand why all they really want to do is destroy the health care law and push more of the country's wealth upwards. But they can do that with President Mike Pence. This notion that we're going to wait for someone like Paul Ryan, who is an intellectual invertebrate and probably the biggest fake in American politics, to do something about this particular crisis, that's ludicrous, okay? I don't think even electing Rob Quist and John Ossoff is enough to scare them out of the stupor they're in right now.
What do you think? I mean, what is that about? Because I think there's two ways of thinking about that, Charlie Sykes, and I'll ask you this. One is a kind of psychological phenomenon in which they've essentially been effectively bullied and captured. And maybe that's because of what they experienced during the campaign. And another is just a raw calculation of political advantage, which is basically, we have seen in the past people that did not get on the Trump train got run over. I'm not going to make that mistake. Which of those two do you think it is?
I think it's both of those. There is that political Stockholm syndrome. There is a real sense of intimidation. You just, you know, why bother have to put up with it? You know, you'd be attacked by, you know, the entire, you know, Trump troll army. But there is then also that kind of political Faustian bargain that you're referring to, which is that, look, we can't break with him. We can't say bad things because otherwise we won't get the tax cuts. We won't get the tax reform. We're not going to be able to get health care. Now, the question is, what happens when Paul Ryan or somebody else wakes up? They lost those elections. They realize the entire agenda is right now eclipsed. What if, in fact, it is dead in the water? Does that change the calculation? This, you know, I mean, it's one thing to sort of, you know, sell a little bit of your soul in order to get what you want, but the pieces are getting bigger and bigger, and the butcher's bill is getting higher and higher, isn't it?
Well, and to Jason, your point also, I mean, you know, the legislative agenda, if the trade here is we will tolerate anything, you know, up to and perhaps including him shooting people on Fifth Avenue, so that we can, you know, we can bring the corporate rate down.
Right.
At a certain point, you know, it imperils the legislative agenda itself, it seems to me.
Right. They're already in trouble. You already have people unhappy about them accomplishing their greatest campaign promise, which is to do something about the Affordable Care Act. It's time for Pence and Ryan to be more Frank Underwood than Fitz. Like, they should be thinking about their own political future and saying, look, we may not say this out loud, but at some point, this guy may have to go.
And that's a great point, Charlie Pierce, that Jason just made. The new polling that we have at NBC is that approval rating for the revised AHCA is sitting at 22%, 24%. The president is remarkably unpopular at the moment. The Republican Party on the generic ballot. I mean, there is this sort of like every political sign is blinking red at the Republican Party right now.
They are, and yet all you get are furrowed brows and stroked chins, and people who are deeply troubled. That's what you get. I mean, you don't get anything more than that, and you're not going to get anything more than that. I don't think they're going to do anything about this guy. I really don't. I think they're going to pass something resembling the current AHCA, which is going to be manifestly unpopular, and I think he'll sign it because there's very little he can do now except sign anything they put on his desk. Then they're going to get their tax reform, which is going to shove more wealth upwards. He'll sign that, too. At that point, I think they will rediscover where they put the mason jar.
You think they're basically making the calculation of just grin and bear it to get these two pieces of legislation across the desk?
I don't have another explanation for the unanimity of silence.
Charlie Sykes, you think that's a good read?
Yeah, no, well, I mean, that's the reason. That's what they're doing right now. And, you know, that's why Paul Ryan has been so reluctant to say anything, because he knows that at the moment that he breaks bad in this particular environment, that all deals are off and who knows what happens. Well, but again, you know, I disagree with Charlie Pierce here. I don't think they're right now, I don't think they're going to get this legislation. No. Well, I think you're looking at the entire first year of the Trump presidency with no major legislative accomplishments whatsoever. This is consuming everything in Washington right now.
Jason Johnson.
And it's about to get worse.
Charlie Pierce and Charlie, thank you all for your time tonight. Before we go,